Jasmine Taylor pushed open the glass doors of Luxe Nails, the scent of lavender polish and warm vanilla hitting her like an unexpected wall. She stood tall, her white t-shirt crisp, despite the chill in the Chicago fall air, and her jeans hugging her with casual confidence. A pair of spotless sneakers completed her look, intentional, practical, and to some unforgivably plain. At just 25, Jasmine was the founder and CEO of NovaWell Health, a rising star in the world of healthcare tech, a name whispered in elite investor circles. But today she wasn't in a boardroom. She was simply a young black woman, a woman of color seeking a manicure for the gala she'd spent months organizing, one that would raise millions for youth mental health across underserved communities. And now, standing under the soft jazz and crystal chandeliers of Chicago's most exclusive salon, she was being appraised like a curiosity. She took a breath, smoothing her locks behind one ear, and approached the counter. Brooke Stevens, the receptionist, didn't look up right away. When she finally did, her smile was paper-thin and brittle eyes traveling from Jasmine's natural hair to her simple outfit, pausing with clear skepticism on her unpolished hands. "Do you have an appointment?" Brooke asked, voice polished but laced with judgment. "No," Jasmine replied calmly, her voice warm and steady, the same tone she used in boardrooms. "But I was hoping to get a manicure. I don't mind waiting." Brooke's eyes flickered to the nearly empty salon before her fingers skimmed a clearly idle appointment book. "We're fully booked," she said, already looking back at her screen. Jasmine blinked, then smiled gently, undeterred. She reached into her crossbody bag and produced a sleek platinum Amex. "I'm happy to pay for an express service." Brooke's lips curled into something almost resembling amusement. A young nail technician, Lena Brooks, slender and brown-skinned, maybe early 20s, paused mid-buff, her eyes darting toward the front. But she quickly dropped her gaze. Jasmine noticed, but said nothing. From a sleek hallway, the manager appeared. Vanessa Green, tall, dressed in a blazer as tailored as her tone. Her eyes landed on Jasmine, then flicked briefly to her clothes. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked Brooke, not acknowledging Jasmine directly. "She's asking for a walk-in," Brooke said. "But we're booked." Vanessa gave a tight smile. "We maintain a particular standard here," she said, the word particular doing far more lifting than it should have. Jasmine felt a familiar warmth rise in her chest, humiliation wrapped in frustration. She swallowed it down. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'm just asking for basic service. I'm attending a charity gala tonight. It's important." Vanessa's expression didn't soften. "And I'm sure you'll find another salon more suited to that." The words landed like a slap, polite but cutting. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood straighter. A second later, Whitney's voice floated across the salon. "Some people really don't know their place," she said, not bothering to whisper. A few others chuckled, and Jasmine felt all eyes glance, then slide away. The moment passed in silence, complicit. Jasmine considered leaving. She almost did. But then she looked back at Brooke, who was already ignoring her, and at Vanessa, who was turning away. She exhaled. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as if nudging her. She ignored it, stared ahead, and said, voice calm and strong, "I'd like to speak to someone in charge." Vanessa turned back. "You already have," she said coolly. "And I'm telling you there's nothing we can do." Jasmine nodded slowly. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes burned with quiet clarity. The door behind her swung open again, the wind from Michigan Avenue slipping in like truth itself. And for a breathless second, she didn't move. Would she walk away or speak up? She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The tension inside Luck's nails had thickened like over-applied top coat, shiny brittle, and one wrong word away from cracking. Jasmine Taylor, a young black woman, tossed in the center of the salon's immaculate lobby, surrounded by gleaming surfaces and invisible walls. Her posture remained graceful, chin held high, but her heart pounded with a rhythm she'd known since childhood, the rhythm of being a woman of color in a room that wished she wasn't there. She'd hoped naively maybe that a clear explanation and her platinum card would have bridged the gap, that they'd look past the jeans, past the white tee, and see her intent, her purpose. But the veneer of civility was slipping fast, and under it Jasmine could feel the burn of something older than this moment, inherited distrust, daily microaggressions, and a familiar sense of being unwelcome. Still, she refused to meet dismissal with rage. She knew that in places like this, the moment a black woman raised her voice, the world stopped listening. Vanessa Green, the manager with pressed slacks and cool eyes, crossed her arms now. "As I said, we're fully booked and we have a certain environment to maintain," she said. Her tone was formal, rehearsed, shielded in professionalism, but not warmth. She didn't glance at the computer or the appointment book. She didn't need to. Her decision had already been made the moment Jasmine walked in. Jasmine stayed calm. "I understand," she said evenly, "but I'm willing to wait. Or pay for priority service." Brooke, still behind the counter, scoffed quietly. "Honey, it's not about the money," she said, voice just loud enough to carry. "We're not that kind of salon." The smirk on her lips betrayed something far sharper than policy. "I'm preparing for an event tonight. A charity gala." "It matters," Jasmine said again, keeping her voice low but clear. Her words were not a plea, they were a boundary. Whitney Collins, lounging nearby in a leather chair, let out a theatrical sigh and raised her voice without lifting her gaze. "A gala." "Sure. And I'm brunching with the mayor tomorrow." A ripple of laughter echoed behind her words. Jasmine's fingers curled lightly at her sides, knuckles tightening. Lena Brooks, the young brown-skinned nail technician seated at the far end of the row, paused mid-stroke on a client's nails. She had been quiet the whole time, but her eyes flicked up, catching Jasmine's. There was something in that glance, an apology perhaps, or a recognition. But still, Lena said nothing. She bent her head again, lips pressed in a thin line. Jasmine stepped closer to the front desk. Her voice was steady, but a fraction sharper now. "I've asked respectfully. I've offered to pay. I've been polite. And I'm being treated like I don't belong." Vanessa didn't flinch. She gave a slow blink as if the words were tedious. "We have standards. You're disrupting them." The word standards hit harder than expected. Jasmine stood silent for a beat, then said quieter than before. "Standards based on what?" Brooke leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Her smile predatory. "Look, ma'am," she said, using the word like a slap, "maybe check out the strip mall 2 blocks down. They're more flexible." The unspoken word, of course, was "people like you." Jasmine's breath caught. Not out of shock, but recognition. This wasn't new. This was America, with the volume turned just high enough for her to hear, but low enough for the rest to ignore. She reached into her bag again, not for her card, but for her phone. Vanessa's tone shifted harder now. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one last time to leave." From across the room, Whitney added with a chuckle, "Someone call security before she files a Yelp rant." And just like that, Jasmine's body moved without thinking. She turned toward the exit, shoulders squared. Her hand didn't tremble as it tapped on her screen. A name appeared: Ethan Carter, husband, investor, quiet storm. But before she pressed call, she stopped. Was this worth pulling him in? Was this small war over nails of all things worth disrupting his day? The answer suddenly was yes, because this wasn't about polish, this was about dignity. The salon door opened with a soft chime again, but not for Jasmine. It was a delivery man. Still, every head turned. In the pause, Vanessa motioned toward a security guard standing near the coat rack, a broad man in his 40s whose posture straightened when summoned. He hesitated, eyes flicking between Jasmine and the manager. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." Jasmine turned to face him. Her voice didn't rise. "For asking for service." The guard looked away. "I don't make the rules." "No," Jasmine replied, her tone like marble, cool, smooth, and unshakable. "You just enforce them." The quiet in the room deepened. Even the jazz had stopped, paused at the end of a track, the next not yet cued. And in that silence, Jasmine took one step toward the door, then another. But at the threshold, she paused. She turned to Vanessa. "You're making a mistake," she said. Vanessa's lips curved into a smile. "The only mistake was letting you through the door." Jasmine nodded once. No more words. She stepped out into the chill of Michigan Avenue, the wind wrapping around her shoulders like armor. Behind her, laughter resumed. The chime of the door closing behind her felt like a gavel. Judged, rejected, ejected. She exhaled slowly, pulling out her phone again. Ethan's name glowed back at her. She hadn't wanted to involve him, but this wasn't just about her anymore. Somewhere across the city, a Porsche engine hummed to life. And inside Lux Nails, no one realized they had just declared war on the wrong woman. The silver Porsche pulled up to the curb with the precision of a man who didn't need to ask twice. Ethan Carter stepped out, his black dress shoes silent against the pavement, his charcoal suit molded perfectly to his 6-foot frame. He moved with a quiet certainty that came not from wealth, but from experience. A quick glance at his phone told him everything he needed to know. Jasmine had called, hung up before it rang, and that was all the signal he needed. When a woman like his wife didn't say anything, you listened harder. Inside Lux Nails, the illusion of calm had resumed. Jazz filtered softly through the speakers again. Whitney Collins was halfway through her mimosa, speaking animatedly about her weekend in Aspen. Brooke had returned to her desk, tapping aimlessly on the screen, while Vanessa had disappeared into the back office. Lena Brooks, the young brown-skinned technician, kept her head down as she filed another set of nails, though her hands trembled slightly. Something had cracked open in her, but she hadn't named it yet. The glass doors opened once more, letting in a gust of wind and Ethan's presence. Everything in the salon paused, not loudly, but sharply. The clients looked up, some subtly straightening their posture. Brooke stood instinctively, plastering on her professional smile. "Welcome to Lux Nails," she began, voice sweetened. "Do you have an appointment?" Ethan didn't look at her. His eyes found Jasmine immediately standing just to the side of the entrance. Her arms were folded, her gaze steady. The moment she saw him, her shoulders relaxed, not from relief, but recognition. He was here. Now it was time. "I'm here for my wife," Ethan said. The word wife sliced through the room like a violin string snapping under pressure. Brooke's mouth opened, then shut. "Your wife," she repeated, eyes darting to Jasmine. "That's right." Ethan walked forward, standing beside Jasmine. "Her name is Jasmine Taylor. She came in for a manicure. Instead, she was insulted, dismissed, and escorted out for no reason other than her skin and her clothing." Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't need to. This wasn't the part where she defended herself. That part had passed. Now it was the world's turn to justify itself. Vanessa emerged from the back just in time to hear Ethan's words. Her steps faltered, eyes narrowing at the sight of him. "Is there a problem here, sir?" she asked, trying to summon control with posture and tone. "You tell me," Ethan replied, voice calm, sharp-edged. "You had a woman of color, my wife, stand in this room, request service, offer to pay, and instead of professionalism, she received thinly veiled disdain and a security escort." Whitney coughed into her flute. Brooke's hands fidgeted at her sides. "I assure you," Vanessa started. "We treat all of our guests, do you?" Ethan interrupted. "Or do you treat those who look like they belong in your marketing brochure?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, this is not the place." Respect, Jasmine finally spoke, her voice measured but filled with precision. "You showed me none. You mocked me. You assumed I didn't belong because I'm a black woman in casual clothes. You never asked who I was or why I came. You just assumed." The room was silent. Even Whitney stopped sipping. Jasmine took a breath and let it out slowly. "I told you I had a gala tonight. You laughed. You said I wasn't the standard." Brooke tried to speak. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," Ethan said, stepping forward now. "That's the problem. You didn't know she's the CEO of NovaWell, a healthcare company that provides mental health access to thousands of underserved kids. You didn't know she's being honored tonight for her work, and you didn't care." Lena, still seated by the polish racks, looked up again. Her lips parted. Her eyes met Jasmine's. "They didn't give her a chance," Lena said quietly. All eyes turned. Lena stood up, her voice trembling but firm. "They didn't even ask her name. They just looked at her skin, her clothes, and decided." Brooke's face drained of color. Vanessa turned to Lena sharply. "Lena, this doesn't concern—" "Yes, it does," Lena said louder now. "It concerns all of us." For the first time, Ethan's expression softened slightly. He nodded toward Lena. "Thank you," he said. "That's all it takes sometimes. One person to say the truth out loud." He pulled out his phone and tapped. "I'm calling the board," he told Vanessa. "I sit on the investment committee for Luxnail Group's parent company. What happened here is a violation not just of customer service, but of our DEI agreements and the core of what this brand claims to represent." Vanessa's face paled. "Wait," she said quickly, stepping forward. "Can we speak privately?" "No," Jasmine said. "You humiliated me publicly. You don't get to hide behind doors now." Lena stood frozen, caught between fear and relief. Jasmine turned to her and offered the smallest smile. It wasn't pity, it was respect. From the lobby, a client gathered her purse silently and walked out without finishing her manicure. Another followed. A ripple. The beginning of something larger. Jasmine looked at the room one last time. "I don't need an apology," she said. "I need change." Then she turned to Ethan. "Let's go." As they walked toward the exit, Lena stepped forward. "Wait," she said softly. "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Jasmine paused, turned back. "You did," she said. "Just now." The door closed behind them. The salon was left in stunned silence. Outside, the wind picked up. Jasmine's coat fluttered behind her as Ethan opened the passenger side of the Porsche. She slid in without a word. Inside, Vanessa stood frozen in the center of a room that no longer felt like hers. Whitney glanced around, nervously finishing her drink in silence. Lena sat back down slowly, hands resting on her lap, a decision beginning to form deep within her. and Brooke stared at the empty doorway as if it might speak. But it didn't, because everything that needed to be said had already been spoken. Inside Lux's nails, silence spread like spilled polish, bright, jarring, impossible to ignore. The air had shifted the moment Jasmine Taylor and her husband, Ethan Carter, exited the salon, leaving behind more than just stunned faces. They had cracked open something deeper, the salon's shiny veneer of exclusivity now exposed as a mask for quiet prejudice. Brooke stood behind the reception desk, her hands resting on the counter, knuckles pale. Whitney Collins stared at her now lukewarm mimosa, as if it might offer an escape. And in the middle of it all, Vanessa Green, the manager, in her perfectly pressed blazer, stood still, arms crossed, face stiff with control that was quickly slipping. It was Lena Brooks who broke the silence. The young brown-skinned technician had returned to the polish racks, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Her breath was shallow. Her cheeks burned. Jasmine's words, her calm, deliberate clarity, still echoed in Lena's chest like a steady drumbeat. "You mocked me. You didn't ask. You just assumed." She had seen it happen before, in small ways. A client turned away for an accent too thick or a hairstyle deemed unprofessional. A girl wearing sneakers told they were booked, but no one ever said anything. Not the staff. Not the other clients. Certainly not her. Vanessa's voice finally sliced the silence. "Lena," she said sharply, "that was incredibly inappropriate." Lena turned slowly. Her voice was soft, but it didn't shake this time. Was it? Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me, she deserved to be treated with respect," Lena said louder now. She asked nicely. She offered to pay. She never raised her voice. And we treated her like she didn't belong. Brooke spoke from behind the counter, her voice tight. "We didn't know who she was." Lena's eyes snapped toward her. And if she wasn't someone important, that would make it okay. The question hung in the air, a quiet challenge no one was prepared to answer. Another client, the same woman who had paused earlier with her half-finished manicure, rose from her chair. Her voice was hesitant. "I watched it happen," she said, "and I didn't say anything. I'm sorry for that." Vanessa crossed her arms again, but the defensive edge had dulled. "This isn't the time for drama," she muttered. "No," Lena said firmly. "It's the time for honesty." The door opened and a new client stepped in, but the room was too still to acknowledge her. The newcomer froze at the energy, sensing the tension, then quietly backed out. Ethan's call to the board had started a chain reaction Lena hadn't anticipated. A group email had already landed in Vanessa's inbox while they stood there, a subject line in all caps, "Urgent Compliance Review." Lux Nails, Gold Coast. She hadn't opened it yet. "I've worked here for 3 years," Lena said quietly. "And I've watched people like her, black women, brown women, be treated like they're bringing dirt into the room. No one says it, but we all feel it." Whitney scoffed. "Oh, please, let's not make this about race." Lena turned to her, and the words came sharper than she expected. "It's already about race when someone walks in, and you decide their worth before they say a word." Brooke, still frozen behind the desk, let out a short breath like she was about to cry. Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean anything by it." "But you did," Lena replied gently. "You didn't have to say it directly. You just had to act like she didn't matter." Vanessa looked around the salon, her confidence unraveling. "You have no idea how hard it is to run this place," she said. "To maintain standards. Clients expect a certain image." "Then your image is broken," Lena said simply. In the corner, the security guard still near the coat stand shifted his weight uncomfortably. He hadn't spoken, hadn't moved since Ethan left, but his eyes flicked toward Lena now, with something almost like apology. Vanessa's voice dropped hard with warning. Lena, think very carefully about what you're doing right now. I am, Lena said. For the first time in a long time. The Polish bottle in her hand clicked gently against the shelf. She turned it over once, then set it down. The color deep red flashed like a warning, a small symbol of courage finding its shape. From the hallway, the whisper of another tech's voice floated in. She said she was going to a gala. She did, Lena confirmed loud enough now for all to hear. And we laughed at her. Vanessa tried to rally. This is one incident. One misstep. We don't need to burn the whole place down. It's not just one, Lena said. It's been dozens. But no one had the power or the courage to say something until she walked in and refused to shrink. Another client stood up and quietly gathered her things. I'm done for today, she said. I'll pay at the front. Vanessa stepped toward her, panic rising. Wait, please. This is a misunderstanding. The client raised a hand. I don't think so. I think it's been clear for a while. We just didn't want to see it. Lena watched as the woman walked out, heels clicking softly. The door opened, then closed again with a chime that sounded this time like a bell toll. Inside, Vanessa deflated slightly, shoulders sagging. Brooke had turned fully away, wiping the counter with short, erratic strokes. Lena breathed in, then out. She didn't know yet what she'd do next. She wasn't Jasmine Taylor, famous, powerful, protected. But she was done pretending that silence kept her safe. Silence, she realized, just kept her complicit. She turned to Vanessa one last time. You can fire me if you want, she said. But I'd rather lose this job than lose myself. Vanessa didn't respond, and Lena didn't wait for permission. She stepped toward the back of the salon, toward her locker, toward whatever would come next. As she passed the Polish rack, her eyes caught the red bottle again. The color reminded her of fire, but this time not destruction. This time it looked like something just beginning to burn. The rain had passed by afternoon, leaving behind a sky washed clean and soft with autumn light. In the heart of Hyde Park, nestled between a neighborhood cafe and a used bookstore, sat a modest storefront with frosted glass windows and a wooden sign that read, Glow Haven. The name didn't sparkle like Lux or boast gold-plated lettering, but there was something warm and unpretentious about it, like the promise of kindness tucked into a city that often moved too fast. Inside, the space smelled of eucalyptus and citrus, with laughter floating between walls painted in calming earth tones. Clients sat comfortably sipping tea instead of champagne, and no one judged shoes or skin. Jasmine Taylor stepped inside and paused, taking it in. She was no longer wearing the white t-shirt and jeans from that morning. Her deep burgundy wrap dress hugged her like armor, and her curls, once swept into a ponytail, now framed her face freely. The air here was different, slower, safer. She'd come not just to fix her nails for the gala, but to remember why she started everything in the first place. A receptionist greeted her with a genuine smile. Hi there. Welcome to Glow Haven. Do you have an appointment? Jasmine smiled back. Not yet. Hoping for a walk-in. I've had a long day. No problem at all, the woman said warmly. We'll get you taken care of. Tea while you wait. As she settled into a plush chair with a steaming mug of chamomile, Jasmine let her body relax for the first time since that morning. She scrolled through her phone, missed texts, a few social media tags, and a message from Ethan, proud of you. Every room is better when you don't shrink. She smiled, tapping a quiet reply. I'm okay. See you soon. Across the room, a small team of nail techs bustled gently between clients. their aprons simple, their attitudes sincere. One of them, a young black woman with golden-toned skin and braids tucked behind her ears, looked up and paused. She blinked, then smiled wide. "Oh, wow," she said, approaching. "You're Jasmine Taylor, right?" Jasmine looked up, slightly surprised. "Guilty as charged." "I follow Nova well," the text said. "My sister got access to free therapy through one of your programs. It helped her a lot." Jasmine's heart lifted in a way no award ever matched. "I'm really glad to hear that," she said. "Truly." "I'm Nia," the young woman offered. "I'd be honored to do your nails today." As they moved to a quiet station near the window, the conversation unfolded easily. Nia's touch was gentle, but her presence was strong. She asked what color Jasmine had in mind. "Honestly," Jasmine said, "something bold. Something that doesn't ask for permission." Nia grinned. "We've got just the shade." The polish she chose was a rich plum with a hint of shimmer, confident but grounded. As she worked, Nia asked gently, "Is it true what happened at Lux, Jasmine?" Hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I used to work there," Nia said softly. "Last year. Left because I couldn't breathe in that place. It looked fancy, but..." She shrugged. "It always felt like I had to apologize for being me." Jasmine looked at her eyes steady. "You never should have had to." The sun poured in through the window, glinting off the fresh coat of polish. Outside, people passed by with grocery bags and dogs on leashes. Real life moving at its own rhythm. Inside, Nia placed a gentle topcoat on Jasmine's nails, careful and quiet. "They're going to come for you," she said suddenly. "Not just Lux, people like them. When you tell the truth out loud, it scares people who benefit from silence." Jasmine exhaled slowly. "I know. But silence never protected me either." "You're not alone anymore," Nia said. "A lot of us saw what happened. We're talking now, sharing, and some of us, we're done being quiet." Jasmine smiled, not a grin, but the kind that came from deep in her chest. Then maybe it was all worth it. As Nia finished, she handed Jasmine a warm towel for her hands. "You're all set." Jasmine stood and looked at her reflection in the mirror near the exit. She saw herself clearly now, not just dressed for a gala, but grounded in her purpose. The woman who had been dismissed, underestimated, and insulted was still standing. And more than that, she was still kind. "I'm going to mention Glow Haven tonight," Jasmine said to Nia. "At the gala." Nia's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I want to," Jasmine interrupted gently. "People need to know that dignity doesn't have to come wrapped in velvet and glass. It can live in places like this." Outside, the day had turned golden leaves rustling in quiet applause. Jasmine stepped back into the world with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. She wasn't just dressing up for donors anymore. She was carrying the stories of every young black and brown girl who had ever been told they didn't belong, and every quiet ally who found their voice in a moment of truth. Across town, the doors of Lux Nails remained open, but fewer clients had walked through that day. Word was spreading subtly, then louder. The social media posts were gaining traction. Ethan had forwarded her a few with headlines like "Black CEO denied service husband, steps in and turns out he owns the place and luxury salon faces backlash after viral discrimination incident." But Jasmine wasn't reading headlines anymore. She was writing her own ending. And tonight, it would begin on a stage surrounded by chandeliers, but grounded in everything she'd learned on the sidewalk outside that glossy door. She stepped into her ride, took one last look at her freshly painted hands, and whispered to herself, "Let's finish this." The ballroom of the Adler Planetarium shimmered under 1,000 tiny lights, as if the night sky had been coaxed down to earth for just one evening. Elegant gowns brushed against polished floors, soft jazz filtered through crystal chandeliers, and conversations sparkled with the charm of a Chicago gala done right. But amidst the glamour and glassware, Jasmine Taylor stood near the edge of the stage, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the podium, waiting for her name to be called. Her plum-colored nails caught the light, quietly bold, just like the woman wearing them. She had walked into this night knowing it would be different, not because of the award, not even because of the eyes now watching her in reverence instead of suspicion, but because for the first time in a long time she had nothing to prove, only something to share. From the front row, Ethan gave her a subtle nod. His expression was calm, proud. Lena Brooks sat beside him, slightly wide-eyed, in her thrift store dress that Nia had helped her hem just hours ago. The invite had arrived last minute, Jasmine's idea, of course. There was no point honoring justice if the voices that sparked it weren't in the room. And now the host announced, "Please welcome our Impact Honoree of the Year, Jasmine Taylor, founder and CEO of NovaWell Health." Applause rose full and warm. Jasmine stepped into the spotlight, heels steady, heart ready. She adjusted the mic. "Thank you," she began, "not just for this award, but for listening." A quiet settled over the crowd, the way rooms sometimes lean in when truth is about to be told. "I wasn't going to share this tonight," she said. "But a few hours ago I was reminded why NovaWell exists, why I exist in this space, and why we still have so much work to do." She paused, finding Lena's eyes for just a second. "I walked into a salon this morning, just a regular woman in jeans and sneakers trying to get my nails done before this event. And I was told in so many words that I didn't belong. There were murmurs in the crowd, hushed and uncomfortable. I wasn't loud. I wasn't late. I wasn't asking for anything outrageous. I was just a black woman walking into a space that wasn't built with people like me in mind. And I was turned away." She let the silence breathe, but not for too long. But I wasn't alone. Someone stood up quietly, bravely. A technician who risked her job to say, "This isn't right." Her name is Lena Brooks, and she's here with us tonight. Applause rose again, slower this time, then stronger, as Lena flushed and nodded gently. "She reminded me of something important," Jasmine continued, "that it doesn't take a title or $1 million company to create change. Sometimes it takes one person telling the truth even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She spoke now, not just to the donors or the board members, but to every young girl watching online, every grandmother in the back row, every man who still wasn't sure what allyship looked like. "I started NovaWell to provide access to mental health resources in communities that were overlooked for too long. But access means nothing if people still feel unworthy when they walk through a door. Dignity doesn't start with credentials. It starts with how we treat each other when no one is watching." She exhaled slowly. "And yes, some places are changing their policies now. Some people have offered apologies. That's a start. But the real victory was walking out of that salon head high and walking into another where I was seen respected and even celebrated." A few audience members nodded. One woman wiped at her eyes. "I'll leave you with this," Jasmine said, her voice steady. "When we use our voices, even when they shake, we make room for others to rise. And when we refuse to shrink, we teach the world how to expand." Applause thundered now. Ethan stood leading the crowd. Beside him, Lena remained seated for a beat longer, her hands pressed to her heart, tears brimming but unfallen. Nia, watching from the side via a live feed, texted her 3 words. "You did it." Backstage staff members scrambled to prepare for the next speaker, but Jasmine lingered as she stepped down, taking in the moment. It wasn't just an award, it was a turning point. Not for headlines or statements, but for the quiet revolution she'd helped ignite. Later that night, as the ballroom began to empty and centerpieces were quietly cleared, Jasmine stood at the edge of Lake Michigan, looking out over the water. Ethan wrapped a coat around her shoulders. "You still thinking about today?" he asked. She nodded. "Not the bad part. Just how it ended." "How it's beginning," he corrected gently. She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. And in the quiet beneath the stars, with the city glowing behind them, Jasmine realized something sometimes. Justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it enters on painted nails and a whisper that says, "I belong here." On a quiet night by the lake with the city lights shimmering like old dreams across the water, Jasmine Taylor stood not as a CEO, not as a woman who had endured humiliation, but as someone who chose to rise gracefully, steadily, when the world expected her to shrink. Her story didn't unfold in headlines or speeches alone. It lived in the small, brave choices she and others made along the way. A nod of truth from a young nail technician, a husband's unwavering presence, a hand extended instead of withdrawn. This was never just about nails or a gala dress. It was about the everyday battles many face simply for showing up as who they are. Jasmine, a black woman with talent, dignity, and vision, reminded us that real justice begins when we stop deciding worth by appearance. And Lena, in all her quiet courage, taught us that a single voice, when rooted in truth, can echo through the walls of injustice and crack them open. Like a small porch light glowing steadily in the night, an act of kindness or courage, however modest, can guide others through their darkest moments. It may not shout, it may not trend, but it stays lit, and that's enough. So as we go back to our routines, sipping morning coffee, offering a smile to a stranger, or stepping aside to listen, let's remember what Jasmine taught us. Dignity isn't given, it's recognized. And sometimes it takes only one person choosing to see someone else clearly to start a quiet revolution. If this story spoke to you, share it. Pass it on like a warm light passed from palm to palm, because someone out there may be waiting to be seen too.